Thank you. Please stand as you are able, and let's move together. Notice your feet. Notice your back. Let your heads float up and breathe. Take a moment to give yourself some tactile input on your arms. You can squeeze, you can brush, you can pat, you can tap. Maybe try some other body parts. Wake everything up. Stretch your fingers tall and big, and then curl up small. And again, stretch really big, and curl up small. And now turn and look at your neighbor. You can give them a smile. Get a little twist. And think about anything above your waist and move it any way you want. You can move your head, your fingers, your wrists, your elbows, your back. Now anything below your waist, lower body, you can move your knees, your feet, your hips. Now plant one foot on the floor and move the other side of your body any way you want. You might have to smile at your neighbor again. And switch to the other side. And do a little cross lateral. If you have some room, you could try your feet. And give yourself a nice little bounce to finish it off. Take a nice breath. You guys look great. How do you feel? Yes, good. Thank you so much. You may have a seat. I am a movement educator at the theater school and other locations around Chicago. When I say this to people, they sometimes look at me a little sideways and say, "What exactly do you teach?" I help my students become aware of their movement patterns so that they can build skill and gain mastery over themselves, so that they can be the most creative, most authentic, most inspiring performers that they can be. And I believe it's not just my students who can benefit from this. We all can, because mind and body are not just two separate parts that happen to affect each other. They are the same system. When we become aware of our movement, our habitual, nonverbal behavior patterns, we become more aware of ourselves and our thinking. In fact, there is a whole field called Movement Pattern Analysis that studies this connection. Creator Warren Lamb used his system to advise multinational corporations and government organizations at the top management level. He showed us that by understanding the way we move, we can understand human action and interaction. The more we know about our movement, the more we know about ourselves. I've always been interested in movement. I grew up in a number of small towns in the South, and every time my family moved, I would show up in a new neighborhood and a new school, and I'd try to figure out where I fit in. And I'd watch how the people around me responded to me. After college, I moved to New York City to become an actress. And with every play and musical that I was in, I got to embody a new character with my body. I could be bold, shy, distracted, and direct. With every character, I expanded my understanding of who I could be. And I inhabited people who were different than I was. Just walking down the streets, I saw millions of people who inhabited their bodies and their ideas uniquely. In between acting jobs, I temped in lots of different offices and organizations, and I watched the people around me. In some offices, they got along really well, and in some offices, they didn't. Some teams shared leadership among the individuals in the team, and some didn't. Some supervisors were interested in what I had to offer beyond what I was originally hired for, and some didn't. And I wondered why. There was movement all around me, but I didn't understand what it meant. So I studied. As I transitioned from actress to educator, I studied developmental movement and the way the brain learns. I trained in the Alexander technique, learning about the nature of habit and choice and the fight, flight, freeze mechanism. And I studied movement pattern analysis. And here's what I've gleaned. How we move is how we think. If we can understand our movement better, we can better understand how we make decisions. If we can better understand how we make decisions, then we can build on our strengths, help others do the same, reduce misunderstandings, reduce struggle, and increase satisfaction. Now, I can see a couple of you crossing your arms skeptically, leaning back, looking at me out from under your eyebrows. How exactly does knowing about movement make the world a better place? And what's all this stuff about making decisions? First of all, we all make decisions all the time. You decided to come here today, and you had an immediate reaction when I walked out on the stage. Some of you decided right away that you are or are not interested in what I have to say, and some of you are still deciding. That's the decision-making process. Back in the 1950s, Warren Lamb was a British management consultant in the field of nonverbal behavior. He had studied with Rudolf Laban, who was a pioneer in movement observation. Lamb expanded upon Laban's work, creating a system to identify our intrinsic movement patterns and using them to predict our behavior and our thinking and the way we make decisions. He identified that even though there are lots of different ways to make decisions, that all of us move through the same 3 stages. We gather information, we deliberate, and we take action. Some of you are gathering information as you listen. Some of you are weighing what I'm saying against your own priorities and determining whether to stick with me. And some of you have already decided. Those are the 3 stages. We move back and forth between these stages according to our preferences. We have preferences for which stage we do first, how we approach the stage, and how much time we spend in each stage. In addition, we have preferences for how we interact with other people. In each stage, we might prefer to work collaboratively, or to work independently, or to go back and forth between the 2. With all of these preferences and stages and interaction styles, there are many, many different combinations and ways to make decisions. And all of these combinations make us unique. And guess what? We think the way that we do it is the best. And we gather around us people who do the same thing because it feels great. Don't you feel wonderful when you feel understood during a mutual discovery process? Don't you love it when you're working with people to come to grips with an idea? Do you feel exhilarated when you feel like you are working right at the exact pace, moving forward with your project? This happens when we're in sync with other people. So what's it like when we're not in sync? Well, have you ever had a great experience with someone brainstorming for a project, and then later you clashed with that same person because you felt like they were rushing you to move to action before you were ready? Maybe you have a colleague who likes to come hang out at your desk and talk through all the things about the project you're working on, and you don't understand why they can't just go work by themselves. I feel quite sure that I've confused a number of people in my time. You see, I have a very strong preference for collaborating when I'm gathering information, and a slight preference for working independently when I'm taking action. Before I knew this about myself, I didn't realize that I was switching from sharing to privacy and leaving out a person who thought we were working together on something. So that if there's anybody out there listening to this that I've done this to, I'm really sorry. Now that I know this about myself, I can do better. This is not personal. Tensions happen when we're in different stages of the process. Tensions happen when we have different interaction styles. Tensions happen when we're not in sync and communication fails. Thinking back to those days when I was temping, what I was observing was people's decision-making styles. I saw conflict between people who were otherwise very smart and very capable. And I saw leadership styles that were valued and held up, and others that were devalued and pushed aside. It feels good when we gather around us people who operate the same way we do. But the problem is, when we bring those people around us, we build on each other's strengths, but we also build on each other's weaknesses, leading to blind spots and groupthink. And often, we have pushed aside the very people who would have filled in those blind spots and helped create a better outcome. You may have heard in the media a lot of talk these days about the importance of diversity on teams to improve outcomes. Organizations like McKinsey and Credit Suisse and Northwestern are doing research on this. Here are a couple of examples for you. Did you ever hear about the original creation of airbags for cars? Airbags were created by an all-male engineering team. And they created airbags and designed them for people like themselves. Early versions of airbags injured and sometimes killed people who were smaller than they were. And it wasn't just the all-male engineering team that had blind spots. Even though airbags have been standard since the 1990s, it was not until the year 2008 that the US Department of Transportation started to require that airbags be tested on female-sized crash test dummies. There's a similar thing happening in the world of facial recognition. African-American computer scientist Joy Bolamwini discovered this when she was an undergraduate at Georgia Tech. She and her friends were trying out one of the early versions of facial recognition, and they noticed that the technology only recognized her friends who had lighter skin. It turns out that not only the people who designed the original program, but also the people who tested it for accuracy were leaving out people with darker skin. Joy is now a technology advocate, and she has a TED Talk all about how she's fighting bias in algorithms. Both of these products were improved when diversity was added to the team that worked on them. What I'm proposing is that diversity in decision-making styles operates the same way. I mean, just think about it. If your whole team is full of researchers, they're going to love to gather lots of information, but they might not be very quick to decide what to do first. And if your whole team really loves to dig in and develop mission and set priorities, they might be slow to move to action. And if you have a team that's very proud of itself for being in action, they might make some mistakes because they didn't gather enough information. And You need at least one person on your team who can initiate communication in each stage so that all the information, all the work that's being done can be shared among the team. What would happen if we expanded our ideas of diversity to include decision-making style? Fast forward to a world where we embrace diversity of thinking, where we help people work to their strengths. We understand that there's more than one way to move, there's more than one way to behave, and there's more than one way to do a job. And each job brings a different strength and a different style of leadership and a diversity of thinking. Now that you know about this powerful connection between the way we move and the way we think, you might be wondering, what can I do? Here are 3 ideas to play with. Number 1, when you make a decision, check to make sure that you have spent time in all 3 stages: gathering information, deliberating, and taking action. Number 2, if you have an interaction that's awkward or tense, pause. Don't take it personally. It might be that that person is in a different stage of the decision-making process or has a different interaction style than you do. This is your chance to be a creative problem solver. If you can't talk to them face-to-face, find another way to communicate, perhaps by email, or in a shared calendar, or a shared document. Third, keep moving. Grow your awareness of all the ways that feel really good to you. And pay attention to how other people respond to you. The reason I love this work is because I have longed my whole life to be a part of something greater than myself, where I can develop my strengths and be valued for what I bring to the table. And I want to help others do the same. Movement pattern analysis can help us do this. When we understand our movement and our thinking, we can access new choices about how to behave and how to interact with others. Our contributions can be valued, and our collaborations can meet everyone's needs as we embrace the diversity of thinking around us. We can move together into this world. And that's a world I'd like to move around in. Thank you.